Hey, everybody. It's Thursday night, and I'm jumping on here. Robert Lang here, jumping on for a Thursday night live. Hope everybody's having a good evening. I hope we can get a few people joining in here as we're just beginning. Trying something tonight where we're streaming on a few different platforms. And so, right from the get go, I'll say I started a YouTube channel, and all of you who enjoy watching these streams, we appreciate your support and appreciate you liking, sharing, and commenting. But if you'd also go find my new YouTube page, that would be great. And if you just look up Robert Lang or at the real Robert Lang on YouTube, you should find it. If you don't follow me on any other social media platforms, I am on Facebook, X, Instagram, and that is it so far. Although my friend is really trying to get me on Snapchat, but I don't know that I will take that route. Anyway, let's get to it tonight. I got some things I want to talk about. And so the thing that was making the news the biggest in Canada, of course, but it was also North American and globally, no doubt. I'm sure it was a hot topic, and that was tariffs. And so Canada was in a tariff showdown. And all over the media, all over social media, this was the thing that was taking over the news that everybody was talking about and had a lot of people freaking out. Without a doubt, a lot of people were scared about these tariffs coming on Canada. 25% tariff being imposed out of nowhere. It's a big deal. It could have really hurt our economy, which is already a very fragile economy. And so it put Canada on the hot seat and had our politicians kind of reeling, not knowing what to do. Um, I can give Trudeau some credit, though I don't do that often, but I give him some credit for at least being able to negotiate a pause in the tariffs being put on Canada. And this was coming on the heels of Mexico, who was able to negotiate a pause as they promised 10,000 troops to go to the border, and amongst other things that will help secure the US and Mexico border. But Trump was also wanting stronger border security and support on the Canadian border. And so Trudeau promising, I believe it was over $1 billion of support, and the different ways that we're going to be beefing up our border system to stop the flow of fentanyl and other illegal activities that could try to cross from the northern border into the United States. Trump is a man that is a deal maker. And so I wasn't happy about some of the ways that our politicians were trying to handle the threat of tariffs before it became a real thing, because I've seen so many of them wanting to sound threatening back to Trump and thinking that, you got to try to match his level of aggression, I guess. And now I'm not saying that we shouldn't stand up or that we should just be bullied, but the approach that I've seen them taking was, I don't think that we had the weight to back up what was some of the platform that they were trying to take. And we've got to realize that we are in many ways dependent on a much larger economy than the Canadian economy, which is already a very fragile economy. Why is it a very fragile economy? Well, let's just talk about our dollar for a minute. Our dollar sucks. We have inflation that has been insane. You see these prices in the grocery store. Many of the things since 2020 have doubled in price. We have crazy prices on our gasoline, and we've had a decade of poor leadership in this country where the things that our government seemed most concerned about was wokeism, globalism, promoting globalism, looking to achieve globalism through the World Economic Forum, through avenues that were climate change and you know a lot of false narratives about climate change, a lot of things that aren't even scientific. And well, the climate's changing. Yeah, well, the climate's been changing for a long time. It's one thing to be able to talk about pollution, but a lot of these things that are said about global warming and climate change, which is the word now that's mostly used, but that uh, there's just a lot of falsehoods that are promoted and it's a big enterprise that is just taking a lot of money, and a lot of people are getting rich off of it, and some politicians get rich off it as well, and it's an avenue where they can funnel a lot of dollars to different things, and it can really hurt our nation and hurt the economy, which is something, we've been, so many people have become anti-fossil fuels, anti-oil, and so we have a decade of a government that is trying to demonize these things. And then all of a sudden, when we face this threat of tariffs, 25% tariffs, everybody's freaking out and thinking, "Oh no, our economy is fragile." Why is it fragile? It's fragile because we haven't supported our own economy. We've gone in this direction that has been this leftist ideology and extremism, where we're trying to make everything green, and we're trying to eliminate fossil fuels. And green can be good, but fossil fuels aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and they're so plugged into our economy that they are completely necessary. And so Canada has lived to fight another day right now for tariffs, but a decade of not developing our own infrastructure has left us weak and vulnerable. And so when there starts to be talk of maybe needing new trade partners, then we look at Europe, but we've not built the infrastructure to be able to trade with Europe the way that it would need to be done. And so we've handcuffed ourselves where we could have built, supported, had these systems put in place so that we were more independent and ready to trade with other nations and not just reliant on one trading partner, which is the biggest economy, the biggest trading partner in the world. And obviously, we don't want anything to sour that relationship. Um, so I've seen so many of our politicians, they wanted to take this hostile approach. I just don't think that was the approach. The approach was negotiation. That's what I believe that Trump was looking for. Is he serious about wanting to push Canada into a position of becoming a 51st state? I think maybe he's more serious about it than I initially thought, but I also know that he sets a target, he really overshoots a target so that he can find something in the middle. That's the art of the deal. That's what he likes to do. And so he'll throw out something that is outlandish, major, grand scale, and then he'll find something that works. And I think these are things that he's doing in Panama. And Marco Rubio was down there making deals about the relationships with the United States and Panama, because Donald Trump is a deal maker. And this is, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. This is what he likes to do. That's why Mexico was able to negotiate it. When we seen that, I think maybe we got a little bit hopeful that maybe we can negotiate a bit of a pause in these tariffs as well. And so in fairness, I don't think Trump was taking Trudeau's calls for a few days until after the tariffs were put on. But they have a sour relationship, and Trudeau has been vocal bashing Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden Donald Trump became president again, and then he was still foolish enough to bash him on another forum. Like, it's just these things that don't help us. Now, can Canada hold it together? Because we don't know that these tariffs aren't going to come back again. Danielle Smith was making news for going down to Mar-a-Lago, and Danielle is the um, premier of Alberta, and one that I really like. I think, in fact, Danielle Smith has more balls than any other premiers in Canada. That's my opinion. And she went down to see him at Mar-a-Lago, and no negotiated things or talked about things, at least on a casual level. And so when I say, can Canada hold it together, I mentioned to my wife just last night, Rachel, I was talking, and I just said, the idea, I was just thinking about how, what if Alberta decided to join the United States, and it's not just about Canada becoming the 51st state? Because the separatist movement in Alberta is a real thing. I'm from the West, so I know all about it. I can tell you that from 2020 and on, that probably gained even that much more momentum. But in the years before that, and under the Trudeau government, that was really picking up steam. We're talking about a very strong conservative West, especially throughout the prairies. Of course, BC being an exception to that, but throughout Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, those are blue provinces, conservative provinces. And yet, wokeism and things like that were trying to even get plugged into those systems. And so people didn't like it. And talks of separatism was heating up, and we've always had talks of separatism with Quebec, obviously, and that's been heating up again, where many people still want that. But Alberta is a place that actually has the resources that, if they were to take that route, it could really hurt Canada and likely make them that much more successful. Now, you say, well, you don't like that talk about splitting up Canada. Well, I'm saying, can Canada hold it together? Can they hold it together if he tries to impose tariffs again? We've, in many ways, put ourselves in this position by weakening our own economy and not putting ourselves in a position where we can also even trade interprovincially, because there's many trade barriers that limit and hinder free trade interprovincially in Canada. If we would begin to open up some of those avenues, and that, Pierre Poilievre says that could bring, I think he said, $1.6 billion into our GDP. That's very significant. But if we could also begin to put into the works what is needed for selling our natural gas and these things to Europe, it would strengthen our position that much more. So we are not just reliant on the US, but the US has always been our greatest friend and greatest ally. But there's no question, we can't deny that Canada has rode their coattails on some things, and maybe some people don't want to hear that, but yet we've always known, and I've always known from the time I was a kid, we talked about how our military was very small, very great. We have a rich history in our military of courage and strength, but our military has been very much poorly funded, and is not being funded even to the levels that it is supposed to be according to UN, where they ask that the minimum be 2% of GDP, and Canada has been around 1.3 of that, and so coming about $20 billion under where we're supposed to be in funding our military. And so we're supposed to be part of NATO so that we can contribute, that if there's a world crisis, that we also have a military. But yet half of our vehicles and things like this are deemed unserviceable, our military vehicles, because this is something that we've just kind of negated and thought, well, power is evil and all of that. Well, evil is evil, and power is one of those things that keeps evil at bay. Now, I liked a video I shared where somebody was talking about how the left is trying to attack Christians right now because, oh, you guys are all about power and you're supporting power and Donald Trump, and Christianity is not supposed to be about power. I'm not exactly even sure where that narrative comes from. Without a doubt, there's humility, but there's a lot of power when we're talking about the kingdom of God, for one thing. It takes power and strength to hold evil at bay. And there's a lot of evil in this world. And people don't understand that there needs to be positions of strength. There needs to be peacemakers and people that, when threatened, know how to respond. It's laws that hold evil at bay, but also consequences, right? We have laws in our lands and law in our nation, and the fear of consequence holds people at bay. And this is also what military is. It's also retaliatory or defense. And so it can keep evil at bay because people know that there would be a response and there would be consequence. And so this is what helps keep us a sovereign nation, even though many people have tried to even attack the idea of sovereignty with open borders and free migration and people come and go as they want to. Who owns anything? And yet, at the same time, as soon as Donald Trump poses tariffs, everyone's, oh no, he's attacking a sovereign nation. Well, which way is it? You can't just, people are so wishy-washy and flip-floppy on some of these things. They don't actually educate themselves on the broader picture and the full parameter of things. And so, not everything needs to be an extreme position. And some of the labels that they've tried to put on Donald Trump, calling him extreme, is propaganda. It's fake news. It's false media. It's a false narrative. When you are an extremist, and the liberal governments and Democrat government have become extremely left in the last decade, when you applaud, promote extremism, even common sense starts looking extreme to you when it starts going the other way. And so this is where we find ourselves now, where we have a politician who's doing common sense things, and people are freaking out and losing their minds because somebody who is implementing common sense, but to them, it's being labeled, or in their sight, whether they're being honest in their evaluation, or just being exaggerated, or just completely programmed by their own narratives of fear, where they give in to these ideas that common sense is somehow extremism. Like we as Christians, and I like to bring a Christian perspective to world events through these lives and through these broadcasts that I'm doing now. We as Christians should be celebrating these things that Donald Trump is doing, the good things that are Christian values. Now, so many people have just wanted to demonize Donald Trump, and they've demonized him on some of these platforms, like calling common sense extremism, calling being against illegal immigration as being racist. They're not the same thing. Again, you don't have to take an extreme position. You can be for refugees and still be against illegal immigration. In fact, there's many people that are claiming refugee status, trying to do things the right way, and many people just butt the lines and just walk into the country. That's not right. There's people that are going through visas, and going through applications and processes, and doing all the hoops that they need to do so that they can enter the country legally. And then people just want to call it, hate, when we say that no, you've got to come through the front door. Those are extreme positions. Those are extreme positions, and the left has become extremely extreme, and they've become so extreme so that they call common sense extreme. Now, even Christians have brought into this narrative. They don't understand. Now, some Christians, that many people don't understand, why is it that evangelicals are applauding Donald Trump, voted for Donald Trump, for those who were Americans? Because look at the things that he's doing. This is what you guys don't get. Those of you who don't understand this, he's the most pro-life president I've ever seen in my lifetime. That is undeniable. And the proof is in the pudding, and the facts are there, not just in rhetoric, but in policy and actual changes. Christians should rejoice about the good things that take place, and not be afraid and not be silent. So when we see these things that are happening, and somebody's fighting for the unborn, you know, God is a God of life. He's a giver of life. And so we should be applauding these things. Like when, want to talk about extremism, where people are trying to label Donald Trump an extremism, or an extremist, excuse me, but yet under the other administrations, where people were being put in jail, locked up for praying outside an abortion clinic. These are some of the people that Donald Trump just pardoned. He remembered them. Like this, we should be celebrating these things. Celebrating. This is great. He just signed an executive order that men can't participate in women's sports. He's making it so that kids can't have their bodies mutilated through pharmaceuticals and gender changing surgeries. We should be celebrating these things, applauding these things, and not afraid to recognize that there's some good things happening. And we're not afraid to celebrate it, because these are things that are actually Christian values. And a lot of the people that oppose Donald Trump, now he's just a man. He's just a man, but there's things being implemented through this man that are good. And so what do people try to do? They want to take it to extreme narratives and say, well, Christians are making him a Messiah type figure. Anything they can do to get people to start backing away, shying away, losing their support. No one thinks he's well, maybe some people do. Maybe some people are that foolish, but those of us who are spiritually minded, those of us who are also practical and have common sense, are just seeing some things that we've believed for, some things that we've prayed for, hoped for, and some things I thought I would never see again because we were going so fast, so quickly in the opposite direction. Now all of a sudden we have somebody putting the brakes on, and people are freaking out about it when some people are Christians or people that actually have some of these family values still. Even if you're not a Christian or a believer, you have some of these core values, or at least you used to before you let all of this narrative start clouding up your mind and clouding up your judgment, that intoxicating the minds of youth and children with ideologies that are demonic in their roots, and are hurting people. And when we start seeing some of these things being reversed, or the brakes at least being put on for a time, man, we should celebrate and show our support. And so Lance Wallnau said recently, he's a man I like to follow, that as Trump goes after some of these things, the Christian community needs to go after them too. Like, they can't be silent and just be even the silent. I feel like this is where so many pastors are. You're just the silent clapper. You like, you just don't want to talk about these things. Or And I'm not trying to bash people. I don't like the silence in the pulpit and the silence in the church, where Christians are afraid to speak out on some of these things, which is a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. I enjoy this, but I also feel passionate about these things, to get on here and talk about some of these things. And you know what? I have for a long time. So if you think you're seeing a new me, no, you're just getting to see a picture of me, because this is the way I've believed and this is the way I've thought for a very long time. My belief system, it comes from the word of God, and my thinking is framed by the word of God. Now, someone might say, "Well, that's living in a box." No, that's living in a frame of truth, is what that is. When other people don't even know what truth is, because to them all truth becomes relative or something that is just emotional. No, no, I actually have something that is solid and absolute truths that I live by and hold to, that keep me straight, that keep me thinking in a right way, that show me a picture and a standard of truth in a world that is constantly wavering and going back and forth, and where opinions are changing all the time. Now, so can Canada hold it together after all of this extremism, and not sowing and building up our own economy, planting into our own economy? Well, we're going to find out. It's going to be interesting to see. And some of this stuff might get more traction, and uh, you know, there might be some places where we're put in a difficult position, and we just have to continue to see how the ball continues to roll here, and which approach Trump continues to make, and hope and pray that we get a strong leader, like somebody like Pierre Polyev, who is the only man I know that is running for prime minister, that can stand up to some of these things, and has a very intelligent mind, and has great ideas for the economy, but is also somebody who could stand up. He's intellectual, he's smart, he's articulate, he can negotiate. This is what we need. We need someone like this. Now, the left is already trying to demonize him. They've been doing that for a long time. One of the ways they want to demonize him is calling him a Trump-like figure. We need somebody that can stand up for Canada. We need somebody that can make strong decisions. We need a strong leader. We need to move away from globalism and this approach that we've been taking, that is actually moving us towards the system of the Antichrist, which I wasn't going to get into that tonight, and so I better not, because I also want to talk about this last part. Everybody wants to label Trump, not everybody, but the extreme minority, the extreme rhetoric, the extreme Facebook posts, the extreme social media postings. Donald Trump is Hitler. This was even what Kamala Harris tried to pull off in the end. That Trump was Hitler. And I was thinking just before I came on here, I was reminded of during one of Kamala's uh, rallies that someone yelled out something like "Jesus is Lord." I think it was pre-planned by their campaign, is because just by I could see how quick her response was. To me, it seemed like it was something that they planned, where they wanted to placate to a certain group, and her response was, "Oh, you must be in the wrong place. I think you're supposed to be in the smaller room down there somewhere." I guess she found out Jesus' room is a lot bigger than what she thought it was. And that's excellent. I love that. Anyway, people want to call Donald Trump Hitler. You want to talk about being extreme. You want to, Donald Trump is so extreme. Let's call him Hitler. This is what people do. This is what the left does. They say he's an extremist. No, he has common sense. That seems extreme to many of you, but these are things that have been many of the things that are going on are often just common sense principles, and also Christian values, family values. And calling someone Hitler is extremely extreme. And why would Orange Hitler, as people like to call him, because they look to mock and ridicule any way they can, of course, which he certainly is a flamboyant character, I'll give you that. But this term Hitler that the left likes to use, and racist, they like to use all of these things. They use them so much that people aren't even afraid of them anymore. It used to be one time people were afraid if you called them some of these things. They, oh no, not anymore. It's because that's just become just the norm. Identity politics now, where people try to take these roots and use these avenues of slander of these extreme name callings and labels like Hitler. And so Hitler murdered millions of Jews. Donald Trump just got called the greatest friend to Israel that's ever been in the White House by the Prime Minister of Israel. If we would be honest, some of you people that are calling Trump Hitler also hate Israel. Now, we've watched this rise of free Palestine protests, and where it went beyond that throughout Canada, calling for the destruction of Jews, hate speech, real hate speech, actually rising, and anti-Semitism being on the rise in crazy ways. And we've seen some of these things in Canada, and people taking on this way of thinking, yet they want to call Donald Trump Hitler. If he's Hitler, why does he love the Jews? Why does he love Christians? And I know some people would say, oh, he just uses the evangelicals. Let me tell you this, at best, it's mutual. At best, it's mutual. That if he's using the Christians are also using his platform, where they've thrown in their support, and they've seen that it wasn't only promises made, but also promises that are being kept. And people don't understand why Trump has the evangelical support that he has. Well, you're very detached and listening to mainstream liberal garbage, and where these people don't recognize that he has been a friend to the church. If you watched his inauguration, it was surrounded by people praying, Christian people, spirit-filled prayers. It was really a thing to take in. And then, you people might think, well, he just played it for the votes. He's got the votes now. Why is he still freeing pro-life people that are in jail for praying outside an abortion? He's got the votes. If he was just using them off no, he actually believes in some of these things, and keeps his promises, and fights for these things. And we need to pray that he stays on track with that, and continue to take that approach. Christians, don't be afraid to rejoice when you see good things happening. Don't be afraid to speak out and stand where you believe. You don't have to be silent. Those days need to go away. So God bless you guys tonight. If you don't know Jesus, pray this prayer with me. Jesus, I invite you into my heart. Forgive me for my sins. I make you the Lord of my life from this day on, in Jesus' name. God bless you guys tonight.